Shalom, everyone. I'd like to give thanks to the Father for allowing us to see yet another session, another day. And we give thanks to Him for all life, health, strength, wisdom, and guidance, protection, healing. Whatever we need, He has continually provided. As the song used to say, all I have needed, your hand has provided. Your faithfulness is great. And so we give thanks to the Father for his faithfulness to his word, most certainly. And we're going to continue with our study. We are looking at the general theme of rebuilding. And as we continue with that theme, we're looking at the book of Ezra, and we may get into a little bit of Nehemiah. Actually, in the Hebrew scriptures, Ezra and Nehemiah are both one book because they're actually a history of the return of the exiles and a history of all of the ramifications of that return. So as we open our study, as always, we are looking at the idea that the scriptures give us. 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 15 encourages us to study to show ourselves approved unto the Most High, workmen who need not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth, and that we can also rely on 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 16 to remind us that all scripture is God-breathed and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness, that the man and the woman of the Most High may be complete, thoroughly furnished unto every good work. So as we use those scriptures to guide our study, we are in the process of becoming like children, because that's how we should study. We should study the word like a little child. And as we study the word like a little child, that requires that we do so prayerfully. So we are continuing to pray without ceasing. And our whole purpose for the study is to wake up from the slumber that this world has put us into as individuals, but also as a people group. And as we wake up, we are to go back and fetch what the ancient ones already knew and already taught. That's how we're getting into Ezra chapter 3. So that's what we're going to be looking at on this during this study. So as we open the study, I'd like to read from the scripture first. So let's do that. And we're going to be in Ezra chapter 3, starting at verse 1. Now, last time we read Ezra chapter 1 and a little bit of Ezra chapter 2. So we're going to continue, and then we'll remind ourselves as to how we got here and why we're here. Ezra chapter 3, verse 1. And it reads, when the 7th month was come, and the children of Israel were in the cities, the people gathered themselves together as one man to Jerusalem. Then stood up Yeshua, the son of Jozadak, and his brethren, the priests, and Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, and his brethren, and builded the altar of the God, or the Elohim of Israel, to offer burnt offerings thereon, as it is written in the law of Moses, the man of the Most High. And they set the altar upon its bases, for fear was upon them because of the people of those countries, and they offered burnt offerings thereunto, unto Yahuwah, even burnt offerings morning and evening. They kept also the Feast of Tabernacles, as it is written, and offered the daily burnt offerings by number, according to the custom, as the duty of every day required. And afterward, offered the continual burnt offering, both of the new moons and of all the set feasts of Yahuwah that were consecrated, and everyone that willingly offered a free will offering unto Yahuwah. From the first day of the 7th month, they began to offer burnt offerings to Yahuwah, but the foundation of the temple of Yahuwah was not yet laid. They gave money also unto the masons and to the carpenters, and meat and drink and oil, and unto them of Zidon and of them of Tyre, to bring cedar trees from Lebanon to the Sea of Joppa, according to the grant that they had of Cyrus, king of Persia. And then this next part is called Temple Restoration Begun. Now in the 2nd year of their coming unto the house of Yahuwah at Jerusalem, in the 2nd month, began Zerubbabel the son of Shealtiel, and Yeshua the son of Josedek, and the remnant of their brethren, the priests and the Levites, and all they that were come out of captivity unto Jerusalem, and appointed the Levites from 20 years old and upward to set forth the work of the house of Yahuwah. Then stood Yeshua with his sons and his brethren, Kadmiel and his sons, the sons of Judah, together to set forward the workmen in the house of Yahuwah, the sons of Henadad, with their sons and their brethren, the Levites. And when the builders laid the foundation of the temple of Yahuwah, they set the priests in their apparel with trumpets, and the Levites, the sons of Asaph, with cymbals to praise Yahuwah after the ordinance of the king of David, king of Israel. And they sang together by course in praising and giving thanks unto Yahuwah, because he is good, for his mercy endures forever toward Israel. And all the people shouted with great shout when they praised Yahuwah, because the foundation of the house of Yahuwah was laid. But many of the priests and Levites and chief of the fathers, who were ancient men, that had seen the first house, when the foundation of this house was laid before their eyes, wept with a loud voice, and many shouted aloud for joy, so that the people could not discern the noise of the shout of joy from the noise of the weeping of the people. For the people shouted with a loud shout, and the noise was heard afar off. Okay, so we're going to be talking a little bit more about those scriptures. And so at this point in time, what we're going to do is bring up the okay, let me do this first. Okay, so I'm gonna that's right. In order to do that, what I'm trying to do is share the screen so that you can see it. Okay, I'll do it like this. Okay. So I want to take you here first, because this is where we were last time. Still having trouble with this. Let me try it this way. Okay, that's a little bit better. See, I just want to make sure that so that you could see it. Let me do it like that. Okay, yeah, that's better. Okay, so what we're looking at now is what we talked about last time, the hedge being the protection around the vineyard. And this is where Ezra comes in, because what the book of Ezra is actually talking about is the rebuilding of that hedge of protection, and that is around Israel. And that's why we were just reading Ezra chapter 3. And as we said in our previous session, the idea of the hedge has to do with leadership. It has to do with the leaders who are actually supposed to be the hedge of protection around the nation of Israel. And so as we look at that, that's part of what we're looking at. So let's go on to, can I even do that? Okay. I'm going to have to stop the screen share again. Okay. Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulty this time. Okay, I'm going to try this one more time. It's not even in the window now. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to go to this chart here. Okay. This is a chart from a website that is called Coming to Jesus Ministry. I ran across this actually by happenstance, if you will. I was trying to come up with something that would be easily understood and in a chart form about our study as we're looking at Ezra. So I wanted to show you this first because this represents, as it says, charts of the kings of Israel and Judah. If you remember, the nation of Israel started out under King Saul, who was the first king of Israel. And then Israel itself was comprised of 12 tribes, okay? And they are called the sons of Jacob, or the sons of Israel. And so when those 12 tribes came out of Egypt and into the land of promise, once Saul was made king, all 12 tribes were a part of that kingdom, okay? And it stayed that way through Saul, his son Ishbosheth, and then King David, then King David's son Solomon, and then Solomon's son Rehoboam. This will all make sense as we get a little bit further into the lesson. Okay, so once Rehoboam was king, Israel actually became divided into two kingdoms. One of them were the 10 tribes of the north, which is the kings of Israel, that's listed here in this chart, and then the kings of Judah, or the southern kingdom. And so each one of those kingdoms had all of these individuals in positions of leadership. That's why we're looking at this, because we're looking at the idea of this vineyard that the Most High planted and put a hedge around. Okay, well, what happened because of Solomon basically ignoring all of what the Most High told him to do, even though Solomon started out as his father David did, seeking to be in the center of the will of the Most High. But as Solomon's kingdom continued, he began to have wives of all the other surrounding kingdoms. And literally, he had hundreds of wives eventually. And that caused him to worship the gods of those wives. And the father said, okay, because of that, because that's the first commandment, you shall have no other gods before me. And because Solomon did that, the Most High said, okay, I'm going to divide your kingdom up. And so that's how we got the kings of the tribes of the north, the 10 tribes of the north, and Judah and Benjamin in the south. Okay, so that's what this represents. So again, this is another way of looking at it. The kings of Israel, the northern kingdom, go all the way down through Hosea or Hoshea. That's found in 2 Kings chapter 15. And after Hoshea, the kings, the 10 tribes of Israel were actually overrun by Assyria. And Assyria then took them captive into their land, and the 10 tribes then were dispersed by the Assyrians. The southern tribes stayed intact for a couple hundred additional years, and then they got overrun because of disobedience also by Babylon, and we talked about that. So after Zedekiah, then the southern tribes, the southern kingdom, went into captivity to Babylon, and they stayed in captivity in Babylon for approximately I know what I can do. There we go. Okay, they stayed in captivity in Babylon for approximately 70 years. Okay, a little bit over 70 years. Okay, and you'll see why that's important in just a second. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing one more time, and then what I'm going to try to do is pull up the this chart here. Okay. I just don't know if you can. Oh, that's what I have to do. All right. That's what I was doing wrong. Okay. Okay. So now we'll pull up the correct chart. Sorry it's taking so long. You would think by now I knew how to do this. Okay. So we talked about these scriptures already in Ezra. So now we're going to go down to this one. We just talked about Zerubbabel. We just read about Zerubbabel. And again, this is under the title, Repair the Breach, Rise Up and Build, and reestablishing the temple and Jerusalem that came in 3 stages. So actually what happened was, and this is the part that as our study progresses, we're getting a little bit more detail on how the Father works. If you remember last time with that hedge of protection and the people who were going back into the land, we talked about the people who were going to be rebuilding that wall. But actually, that wasn't the first thing that happened. When the first group of people that went back into the land were led in 536 by Zerubbabel, okay? And this is after Cyrus of Persia defeated the Babylonian kingdom. When he defeated the Babylonian kingdom, it was the Babylonians that brought all of the royalty of the southern kingdom into their kingdom, and that's where you remember Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. You remember Daniel. All of those people that we've read about and heard about before. All of those people were all exiles in Babylon. Okay, and they were in Babylon because if you remember our Ezekiel study, it was because of the idolatrous nature of the children of Israel and specifically Judah. All right. And so because of their idolatry, because of their rebellion, that's how the Most High sent Babylon to destroy that kingdom and disperse the people. But once Babylon was destroyed or was